The Ascension of Willow, how General Hospital forged a new villain from the ashes of tragedy. In the tumultuous world of Port Charles, where mob wars erupt with the frequency of summer thunderstorms and long-lost twins are a common inconvenience, true tragedy is often loud, explosive, and public. It arrives with a bang, a dramatic confrontation, or a shocking crime scene. But the most recent and perhaps most terrifying cataclysm to strike the town is not arriving with a scream, but with an eerie, calculated silence. The slow, methodical collapse of Willow Tate is no longer a matter of speculation. It is a confirmed and devastating reality. However, what the residents of Port Charles are failing to grasp, as they watch her with a mixture of pity and fear, is that this is not merely a breakdown. This is an ascension. ABC General Hospital spoilers reveal a profound narrative pivot, one that takes the well-worn trope of a wronged woman and twists it into something far more chilling and complex. What appeared to be a gradual emotional breakdown in the wake of unspeakable trauma has spiraled into a dangerous psychological shift, giving birth to a new persona forged in the fires of betrayal and grief. Willow's journey from a figure of quiet strength and empathy to a calculating architect of retribution marks a significant and unsettling evolution for the show, turning the traditional victim's arc into a terrifying exploration of weaponized grief, the redefinition of justice, and the birth of an antagonist Port Charles never saw coming. This is the story of how the woman who once healed is now preparing to dismantle, and the darkness within her is no longer a secret. It is her new beginning. The shattering of a shield, the genesis of Willow's collapse. To understand the woman Willow has become, one must first remember the woman she was. For years, Willow Tate represented a bastion of quiet strength and profound empathy in a town often lacking both. Her defining shield was her composure, a warmth and understanding that made her a nurturing mother, a loving wife, and a steadfast friend. Her expressions, once a source of comfort for those around her, have now been stripped of their light. They no longer carry the warmth and empathy that once made her a figure of quiet strength, but instead reflect a cold, haunted detachment that unsettles even those closest to her. This transformation was not a sudden, dramatic snap. It has been a quiet unraveling, an insidious process that is far more terrifying than any loud, chaotic outburst. This is the kind of madness that masquerades as clarity, the kind of dissent that hides behind polite smiles and measured tones. It's in this eerie silence that Willow has been deconstructing her reality and rebuilding it upon the foundation of three devastating truths she has been forced to accept. The first truth Willow revealed to herself is the profound injustice of survival without retribution. For months, she had endured the manipulation of Drew Kane, a man who twisted her life into a pretzel of emotional chaos. His abrupt death, however, did not bring relief. It brought a different kind of agony. It robbed her of the closure she so desperately needed. In her mind, there was supposed to be a reckoning, public, humiliating, complete. His death was not an end to her suffering but, as the spoilers suggest, yet another betrayal. He left before she could take back the power he had stripped from her, leaving her trapped in a narrative she did not write, forced to carry wounds she did not ask for, while the world moves on as though her pain no longer matters. This fundamental injustice, that her tormentor escaped accountability, became the obsessive seed from which her new purpose would grow. The second truth is the complicity of silence. Looking back, Willow sees a world that enabled her abuser. She sees the friends and family who, with the best intentions, preached forgiveness and peace. She sees the legal systems and societal structures that allowed a man like Drew to operate with impunity for so long. She even sees her own previous hesitation, her desire to preserve a fragile peace for the sake of her children, as a form of weakness that Drew expertly exploited. This realization has turned her inward empathy outward, but not as compassion. It has become a lens through which she views the entire town, judging every action, every word, for its potential to enable or obstruct her new, singular goal. The final and most transformative truth is her redefinition of power. The Willow of old believed in the power of love, forgiveness, and resilience. The new Willow understands that this was a naive illusion. She now believes that true power is not something you are given or something you inherit, it is something you take. This is no longer about grief or trauma, in a therapeutic sense. It is about retribution and the terrifying question of what happens when a woman who has lost everything decides she has nothing left to protect. She is no longer trying to heal, she is arming herself. The architect of ruin, Drew's legacy, and the departure of a star. At the heart of Willow's dark metamorphosis is Drew Kane, played by the departing Cameron Matheson. The narrative doesn't paint Drew as a simple antagonist or a misunderstood man. It portrays him as a master manipulator, a calculating figure who weaponized vulnerability and preyed on her grief. He was the architect of the ruins from which this new Willow is rising. The storyline meticulously detailed how he used their son, Wiley, as leverage in his emotional games, how he gaslit Michael into isolation, and how he controlled every narrative with a smiling face and carefully chosen lies. The decision for Cameron Matheson to exit the show was more than a casting note. It was a pivotal narrative choice that solidified the trajectory of Willow's arc. Had Drew remained, the show might have inevitably veered towards a path of confrontation, forgiveness, and redemption, the standard fare for soap opera conflicts. His death, however, slammed that door shut permanently. It denied Willow, and the audience, the satisfaction of a courtroom verdict or a final, cathartic admission of guilt. Instead, his death became the ultimate manipulation, an escape from justice that served as the final catalyst for Willow's transformation. This narrative choice is what makes this storyline so uniquely compelling. The producers of General Hospital made a bold decision that had been building behind the scenes for months. While no immediate official announcement was made about Matheson's exit, the story itself made the reality unmistakable. Drew's time in Port Charles had come to a close, not with a hero's farewell, but with the exposed, unraveled legacy of a man who went too far for too long. His absence now leaves echoes, scars, and unresolved pain throughout the town. But for Willow, it means something else entirely: freedom. It is the freedom to rebuild her life without fear, without his control, and without the shadow of the man who tried to erase her light. For viewers, it confirms what they've suspected. For weeks, everything has changed, and nothing in Port Charles will ever be quite the same again. The ascension, from victimhood to weaponized intelligence. What the people of Port Charles failed to realize is that the Willow they once pitied, comforted, underestimated, and tried to shelter has undergone one of the most radical emotional and psychological transformations the town has ever seen. What she's experiencing is not merely recovery, it's reinvention. But this reinvention is not guided by hope or light or any remaining fragments of innocence. It is guided by something colder, something sharper, something forged in betrayal and pain and rage that has been compressed into something weaponized. This new Willow is moving through Port Charles like a ghost wrapped in silk, visible but untouchable. She smiles when it's necessary, hugs when expected, and grieves on cue. But beneath the surface is a new persona, one who is always calculating, always watching, always waiting for the right moment to strike. Her eyes are colder now, more focused. Her voice never trembles, her steps never falter. For those who knew the soft-spoken teacher, the loving wife, the nurturing mother, it is a jarring transformation. Because now Willow is something else entirely. She is strategic grief, controlled vengeance, emotional intelligence weaponized. Her relationships have evolved into transactional systems. Michael is no longer her emotional anchor. He's a co-parent she tolerates, a piece on the board she manages. Sasha, once her mirror in suffering, is now a symbol of everything Willow has chosen to shed: vulnerability, self-blame, hesitation. She looks at Nina, whose own existence was once a source of internal torment for her, with a cold, detached curiosity, another emotional liability to manage or exploit. Even Jason, the ultimate stoic protector, finds himself uncertain of how to interact with this version of Willow, because nothing she says is unintentional, nothing she does is reactionary. Everything is calculated, rehearsed, and executed for a precise outcome. This version of Willow does not want to be understood, She wants to be obeyed. She wants space when she demands it and presence when she needs it. She wants control over every narrative that involves her name, her children, and her past, and she will silence or outmaneuver anyone who tries to write that narrative for her again. It's no longer just about undoing Drew's legacy. It's about rebuilding her own, with materials of her choosing. She is ready to burn down the institutions that protected him, ready to confront the people who remain silent, and ready to challenge the very power structures of Port Charles. She is no longer simply grieving a loss. She is preparing to make everyone else feel it, too. The ripple effect, a town on the brink of a new storm. Drew's death was supposed to be an ending, a closing of a poisonous chapter. Instead, it has become the catalyst for a new catastrophe, one where justice is no longer defined by courts or conscience, but by the emotional reckoning of a woman who feels betrayed by everyone and everything. Her public condemnation of Drew was not just a moment of catharsis, it was a seismic shift that marked the beginning of the end for the old Port Charles. The fallout was swift and absolute. Those who had defended Drew, who had tried to downplay his actions or justify his desperation, began to step back. Legal authorities who had hesitated to act were now under immense pressure. Drew's allies were silent. The reaction from Port Charles was immediate and intense, not because of an explosive outburst or a shocking crime scene, but because it came from the steady, heartbreaking words of a woman who had once stood in the background, quietly breaking apart. Her public stand became one of the most impactful narrative adjustments General Hospital has executed in recent years. It didn't just signal the end of Drew's reign, it marked a beginning for Willow, a new chapter defined not by victimhood, but by authority. Her decision to speak out lit a fire under the storyline, one that forced every character to re-examine their own complicity and silence. It wasn't just Drew who was exposed. It was the entire system around him that had allowed his behavior to go unchecked for so long. Now, with Cameron Matheson's departure unofficially solidified by the writing, the show moves forward without one of its most divisive figures, but not without consequence. Willow's collapse was supposed to be a tragedy, but instead, it has become a storm front, and she is the calm, deliberate, and devastatingly focused. There are no screams, no breakdowns, no public outbursts, only whispers behind closed doors and people walking away from encounters with her, unsure of what they've just experienced, but knowing they've been changed. This is what controlled destruction looks like. It is not messy, it is elegant. It is not spontaneous, it is precise. And it is not temporary, it is transformational. Willow is stepping into a version of herself that no longer tries to reconcile with the past, but rather seeks to erase it entirely and reclaim control in a world that ripped it away from her far too many times. She is done bleeding quietly. She is done whispering truth into voids that never listened. She is done making room for the men who broke her. She has stepped into the darkness, not as a victim, but as its architect. And now, she's rewriting the rules. The entire town sees a woman reclaiming her life, but what they don't see is that Willow isn't rebuilding from the wreckage. She's clearing the entire foundation. And she is doing it quietly, methodically, and without remorse. Port Charles will learn this lesson one way or another. Whether they accept the new Willow or resist her, they will no longer be able to ignore her. Thanks for watching this videos. Please hit the subscribe button for more updated news.